Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, Gertrude. I'm happy to be joining you today. What an honor to be talking with you. My name is Teresa Saputo-Crerend, and I am based outside of New York City in a suburb of New York City in northern Westchester County. My partner and I, my co-founder and I, Philippa Portnoy, founded LaunchBreak. We brought it to market a year ago, in January of 2024. LaunchBreak, you might ask what it is. LaunchBreak is an online community or platform for athletes who play or played women's sports at the collegiate, national team, or professional level. It's a professional networking and shared interest community. And to give you some background as to why or how we came to start LaunchBreak, I would need to go back several decades. And I want to preface this with an understanding that some of the challenges and adversity we faced as athletes doesn't compare to some of the stories I've heard from you and your TEDx talks or some of your guests. But at the time, they were challenges nevertheless. And I think it created it certainly created the genesis for LaunchBreak. So I just wanted to let you know that I have our experience in perspective. Basically, if I go back to the 1980s in New York City, Philippa and I met. She and I were tennis team doubles partners at our university. And at the time, the university was just starting out with full-on women's athletics. They had an all women's program already, but another undergraduate as part of the university was going co-ed for the first time. And they had to merge these two programs and bring the merged team into a higher division. So the obstacles and challenges we faced were resources that didn't compare to the men's teams, poor practice times, not having the regular facilities to prepare and practice, not having the resources to do some of the preparation that the men's team did. It was very early years for Title IX. A lot of the alumni dollars at the school were going towards the men's programs until they sorted it out now that were starting to have full-on women's programs. And so this experience of being pioneers in athletics at the school really bonded our team. So what we may have not had in terms of an ability to, be very competitive in our league, we made up for a real approach to advocacy that would help eventually bring parity to the men's and women's programs. We sat in on meetings with administration talking about how women's sports program could improve. We pushed for better practice times. I think, at 18 years old, I drove the tennis van to certain practice locations that we had to go to that the men were not going to. So we really bonded over this experience. And this squad of ours is basically still intact today. 4 or 5 or 6 of us have really seen each other through all of life's milestones, the good and the bad, the professional, the personal. And Philip and I, over the years, obviously, we've been very much in touch. We have tried to figure out a way. We know we're lucky. And we wanted to figure out a way to somehow replicate this experience of having teammates, powerful women that, can multitask and get things done on our side. And we wanted to find a way to bring this experience to more women as they too move through all of the milestones of life. And we focused on women athletes. And we started out, as I mentioned, about a year ago, we started our first Instagram ad to build a community of athletes who play or played women's sports. Maybe in January of 2024, we had about 75 to 100 members. And that was basically through our own connections, through word of mouth, through people that we came to know having played tennis our whole lives and growing up in and around New York City. Turns out that fast forward to today, over 1,700 women also think it was a good idea. So we have, we're getting close to 1,750 members today. The number changes every day. We have women joining of all generations. They work in all industries. Some are current student athletes. Some are Olympians. Some are former Olympians. Some are former professional athletes. Some are current professional athletes. You get the picture. They represent 48 states of the United States, but also several countries around the world. We want to be the global platform for women athletes. And you might ask, what do the women do when they're on the platform? We are there to propel them forward in their life so that they can make the connections they need to fulfill their professional and shared interest endeavors. We want to supply job search prep for them. If they're applying for a job at a certain company, we want them to be able to tap in to a couple of other launch breakers who have worked at that company or who work there now. We have a mentor program. So the remarkable thing about our community, honestly, is that the women can sign on to be a mentor from the get-go. So it sort of takes that awkwardness out of the equation when a launch breaker can filter the membership directory, see that somebody's a mentor. They can filter it down even more to see what industry they've worked in, what school they went to, what sport they played, and reach out to that person and feel really comfortable about that person wanting to pay it forward and help them. We, as I mentioned, we have women from all generations, women with different experiences, obviously. There's women that have a similar experience to me and Philippa, where they really had to, bring a program up because it was just starting out. And then we have women that, are playing ice hockey and rugby today at their colleges or university on the women's team. There are women on the platform that are the reason ice hockey, for instance, exists as an Olympic sport. We have one woman who joined, who when she played ice hockey in college in the 1980s, it was a club sport and the men's had a varsity team. And she and a couple of other women took on Title IX and they took on the university. And it took a while. She had already graduated, but she still worked on the case. And because of her lawsuit, ice hockey is an NCAA sport. And it's also, women's ice hockey is also in the Olympics. So we have a lot of stories like that.
Teresa, your organization has connected some pretty phenomenal women in sport. And it's just incredible what the two of you have done out of what was a challenge for both of you when you were athletes and in college. Now, with 94% of C-suite women having sports background, why do you think participation in sports equips women in leadership roles in ways other experiences might not?
The 94% of women in the C-suite who play sports, and out of that, over 50% of those women actually played in college. So they reached a certain level, right? Which means that they spent much of their youth playing sports. And along the way, they have developed skills that are completely transferable to anything else they might want to do in life, right? Time management skills, resilience. The Women's Sports Foundation just came out with a study called Play to Lead. And the biggest takeaway that women who played youth sports have from that experience is how to be a good teammate. So skills like that, how to be a good teammate, discipline, knowing you have to practice and put the work in to be better, time management, all of those skills are so transferable to the workplace. Yeah. And a lot of those skills are also transferable to being a leader.
Now, LaunchBreak has grown to over 1,650 members in 650 universities and professional athletes. What strategies did you use to foster and grow this vibrant community?
If the nitty-gritty business strategies would be advertising, social media advertising. We did from in January of last year, we started with Instagram, and we just did highly targeted Instagram ads, which you can do on. It's fabulous what you can do on social media in terms of, by sport, by college, by age, just reaching out to females. So we had a good deal of success with Instagram, and we still do. We also have, depended quite a bit on word of mouth, which has certainly helped us big time in the beginning. And continues to help us. A lot of our members are referring their teammates. Okay. They're referring, their parent or their daughter. So our numbers build that way. We also, women like to pay it forward, obviously. We all know that. And we put out about halfway through last year, we put out in our community an all call to see if any members wanted to volunteer to be ambassadors, to continue to spread the word on their social media and in their meetings and in their workplace. Yes. And right away, we had 20 to 25 women step up, and this was a volunteer position. So we have 20 to 25 women that act as ambassadors for us. We also work closely with current student athletes in this regard, so that they can be ambassadors for us on university campuses.
So can you share examples of how LaunchBreak's mentorship initiatives have positively impacted a member's career?
Yes. I could think of one example. We get feedback on a regular basis. Obviously, it is a community, so they have the opportunity really to just type in feedback whenever they've, had an interaction with somebody on the platform. And we recently had a woman, when you meet with a mentor, that doesn't mean you're getting a job, right? In fact, we
Yeah.
have guidelines about the mentor program that, a mentee shouldn't ask a mentor for a job, right? That's not what it's
Right.
about. It's about connection, and it's about advice and learning from somebody who's already been through the process. But this
Yes.
particular woman reached out to us, and she said that she was the mentee, and she said that the mentee mentor relationship was so wonderful. And it really must have been because the mentor helped her get a job, the same job she had had prior. So,
Okay.
yeah. And we have just a lot of examples of things like that. We have one woman who recently got out of college and went into broadcasting, and she really needed an agent. And she reached out to somebody on Launch Break, and that person connected her with an agency in Manhattan. And now that young woman is represented by an agent. We have another woman who reached out to us who's an Olympian. She was in Paris at the Olympics, and she's hoping to play on the USA team for the World Championships this year. But she knows that she's probably going to start moving away from her sport and into a different profession. And she needed somebody, a mentor, to help her with EMT and firefighting. And we connected her with somebody who is going to have her shadow her when she's out in the field as a firefighter and EMT. So we have so many stories like that. And I think that just going back to, the skills.
Yes.
It is immediately everybody understands one another, because we've all, no matter where we're from, where we played, what sport we played, we all did it probably for a very good portion of our lives.
Yes.
So we all had to make sacrifices and juggle commitments. And so everybody gets that right away about one another. And so we all have similar bearings, and we were all teammates.
What advice would you give to female athletes who are transitioning from sports into business or corporate careers?
Mm-hmm. I think it's what I said before. It's don't discount what you've learned through sport.
Yeah.
And maybe for some women, maybe being in that sport over the past 20 years they did that to get them to the next step. So maybe so many athletes struggle with the fact that their identity has been an athlete for so long.
Yes.
And how am I going to move into the next chapter of my life? But maybe being an athlete is what had to happen in order to get to the next chapter in their lives.
Right.
So they can take all of those skills and present them on their resume or in their interviews as, their onboarding ramp to this next chapter.
So, Teresa, your leadership roles in mentoring and networking programs are really impressive. What lessons from those initiatives have shaped the way Launch Break approaches career development?
I think we're always learning. Again, because we have a community, we're able to poll our members all the time. Philip and I also make a real effort to meet like this with as many members as we can to get feedback. We're always getting feedback. One thing we learned early on is even though the women, and over 35% of them, have been checking the box to be a mentor. So even though we have those, 500 women that are there and they're tagged with the mentor tag, even though they're available to everybody else, we did notice and we did get feedback that people still are a little bit shy about reaching out. So we realized that we had to kind of step in and do some of the mentor matching for them and help connect them, introduce them first so that they can go on their way. So we're constantly making revisions like that.
Now, your work with organizations like Girls Inc. and the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club is really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
How does collaboration with nonprofits align with Launch Break's mission?
So we have so many women on the platform that are either working for foundations or charities, have started a foundation or charity, or just have causes that are really close to them and they want to promote it. So what we do is our Instagram, our social media does a lot of spotlighting of our members, and then also our members' charities and foundations. So we want to make everybody aware of all the good work that our members are up to. We also probably, and we haven't, like I said, we're only about a year old, but we'd like to think about designating maybe one or two charities that the entire community could get behind, so that we could really create, positive change for a couple of causes. We are doing, we are co-sponsoring a conference at the end of April in Princeton, New Jersey, with an organization called Let Her Play, which focuses on making it easier for young girls to get into sport. Because we all know that sport helps with confidence and their health, and then all those other skills I talked about before, which are transferable to the workplace. And that, that conference will be promoted and communicated to all of our members, and they will be invited to join the virtual component or in person.
Talking about sponsorship, your background in managing sports sponsorships with major sporting events like the US Open, how did it shape your perspective on empowering female athletes?
When I worked at Tennis Magazine for many, many years, and then I worked for Evian Natural Spring Water. And when I worked at Evian Natural Spring Water in North America, it was, Evian really kind of created the bottled water business at the time. This was in the 90s. Now it's really a commodity here in the States, obviously. But at the time, Evian was a big backer of sports, in particular women's sports. So they sponsored the World Figure Skating Championships, the women. They were the first sponsor of women's professional beach volleyball. So I was on the board back in the 90s of the first professional beach volleyball league for women. So I've kind of always, and obviously being an athlete myself, I've always loved sports, but I've always had, really cared about women's sports, because had it not been for my journey in athletics, I probably wouldn't have had the career I had, because I went into sports. And just having the team and the squad behind me, the support that I've had, because my dad and my mom really wanted me to play sports, has just been invaluable.
Now, Philippa was named one of Colombia's 50 most influential female athletes during the 50th anniversary of Title IX. That's a significant achievement. How has this Title IX shaped the opportunities available to women athletes, and what more needs to be done? Just explain Title IX to us so people get to understand that.
Title IX made it, mandatory that women's programs, women's sports had to be part of the mix at universities, and that money raised for the athletic program had to go to women's programs as well. There were times when sports like wrestling and rugby were just club sports. And thanks to Title IX, emerging sports like that have been able to become varsity sports at the college level.
Now, with only 3.4% of CEOs worldwide being women, what systemic changes do you believe are necessary to close that gender gap in leadership roles?
So I think I looked at a statistic the other day that there was a McKinsey study that said that it may take another 50 years for parity at the workplace for women. So, the inequities that I was talking about on the field, we all know exists in the workplace, whether it's covered or not, covered in the press or not. So I think that, flexible work hours, equity in pay, child care, all those things come into play when we're talking about supporting women. And honestly, I think Launch Break can help. While we're focused on women athletes right now, what we're providing is a flexible platform for women to network. That the Launch Break platform is really going to help women network in a way that works for them, right? Because women are multitaskers, and they work out of the home, and then they still take on a lot of the household responsibilities, whether they want to or not. So, going out to a restaurant or maybe playing a round of golf, while that's great to do, they may not have the interest or the time to do it. They want flexible networking with like-minded individuals, and the kind of, cut away some of they just want no nonsense networking. And so Launch Break is a platform that offers that and makes it easier for them to make connections that will help propel them forward in the workplace, and hopefully get that number of CEOs, which in the United States is at a dismal 8%, women CEOs in the United States, help get that number up.
So where do you see Launch Break in the next 5 years? And how do you envisage expanding its impact on the women's athletic community?
So in the next 5 years, I mean, for us, the sky's the limit. Globally, we know in the United States, there's about 2 million former and current athletes out there. Globally, that number is going to be much bigger. In 5 years, we'd like to have 100,000 women on the platform. There are so many different ways Launch Break can go. There's so many different legs to this. We could have podcasts. We could have conferences. We could have partnerships with women like yourself. There's so many different angles that it can go. For now, our focus is getting as many women athletes on the platform, and then also to get sponsors, support us, and then also to help women get jobs. So we have a job board, and we invite employers who want to hire women athletes because of all the amazing skills and traits that we had mentioned earlier. We invite employers to contact us so that we can get their job postings up so they can hire a woman.
So what is the most important lesson that you've learned from your athletic journey? And how has it shaped your approach to leadership and entrepreneurship?
I think that, certainly in tennis, in the sport I played, and when I listened to Roger Federer give his speech at a commencement ceremony, he talked about how I think he only won about 51% of his points.
Okay.
But we all know how many matches Roger Federer won in his life. And I think that that's actually a really good example because you can't do everything right all the time, and you're not going to win every point. And even in, you may have a day where you're losing all the points, right?
Yes.
But you can still get there. You could still climb. You can still grow. You can still pursue your goals, and you can still achieve them. And being an athlete has really helped with that kind of resilience. And applying that mindset to a startup is amazing. Because you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days where, you may not believe in it anymore. And you just have to keep going.
Now, my last two questions for you are a bit of a time experiment. In the first one, I'm going to teleport you back into the past. And we're going to go and meet the younger you, the young woman who went into the world of sport, had ambition, had drive. If you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom, just in case there's a young athlete who's listening to this podcast, has no idea how to start, how to get going, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give her?
I would say that the commitment you're making, even if it means you have to miss some fun after school or the party on Saturday afternoon or Saturday night because you're at a sporting event, that commitment that you're making is going to pay off. It's going to pay off because you're doing something you love, but it's also going to pay off in the skills that you develop doing your sport and in the people that you meet. Having a passion is one of the best things that you can develop as a young person. And honestly, if you have a passion about sports, you're going to find your way to have passions about other things as well. So stick with it and don't get sidelined from any of the social media going on about the parties and how fun they are and all of that. They're never as fun as they look on social media anyway. And you are doing the right thing.
Last question. I'm teleporting you into the future now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go and sit with a 90-year-old you. She's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, whoever's with you at the end. If we could teleport into the future for you to go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
I would say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was right, that women can have it all, but they can't necessarily have it all at the same time. And it's probably true for men too, but my life has been in chapters. And at certain points in my life, I've probably been insecure about one thing or the other because I'm focusing on X and I can't focus on Y. But life can be long and there's plenty of time to work hard and find the time where you have the bandwidth to work on the things that are important to you and that you're passionate about. You just have to be patient that it may be the next chapter, not this one.
Absolutely fantastic. Teresa, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
Very, very inspiring to see what you and Philippa are trying to do with Launch Break. Good luck with everything.
Thank you, Gertrude. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and it's an honor to be talking to you.
And thanks to everybody who tuned in. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making